Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome to Unfair Sports, where we take a pensive approach to the sports conversation. I'm your host, Jay, with your favorite co-host, Jimmy. Thank you for watching us here on YouTube, as well as wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. While you're there, like, subscribe, rate us, and review us, and give us 5 stars. You don't think we deserve it? Meh, just give us 5 anyway.
Gifted.
So, on today's episode, we're going to dive into the Rams have shown us that they are all in. The Cowboys pull out a nice little squeaker. OU versus Georgia. Give it to us, gods. NFL injury updates. And then we're going to have some early NBA overreactions because, of course, the season just started, so we've got to overreact. Hit us up on the Unfair Fan Line, 430-901-1906, and let us know what you think about the show. Give us your strongest opinions. You may end up on here, as well as tell us about your daily fantasy situation, how you're doing, how you're not doing. Tell us how much you hate Jimmy, how much you love me, how much you hate me, how much you love Jimmy.
We all hate you.
We don't care. Exactly. So hit us up, 430-901-1906.
Jam Master J don't play with the daily fantasy. What's going on?
What it do, baby? Yes. A week of just
yes.
Show me an ass. Just finally got through it.
Yes,
we got it, Jamie. We
daily
did
fantasy.
it.
Daily
we did
fantasy.
it. So for those that if you follow us on Instagram at unfair_sports, I posted my winnings from daily fantasy this past week. I was able to have a very good 1 in 3 leagues in the top 20. I was number 2 in another league. If Tom Brady would have just given me the Tom Brady special of a game-winning touchdown, I would have ended up in the top 10 in all of the leagues.
We're talking about leagues with thousands of people in there with you.
Thousands. And I ended up being number 2, number 20, and like number 6. But if I would have gotten that Tom Brady, it would have been number 1 because I was the only one that had Brady. The other guy had Chris Godwin. So if I would have got Godwin and Brady together, guaranteed to move up. The other league, we had a guy, he had literally, Jimmy, he literally had 11 rosters in the top 100. And every single one of them won.
Freaking
He
demon.
had 1 through 4, so he won like $45,000 off of 4 of his rosters.
Wow.
It was obscene.
He's a demon.
Demon!
Yeah.
But as we talk about on the Daily Fantasy Show with
Yes.
the OSG, that's not ridiculous. It is by design, by preparing and picking the right roster. So, with that, Jimmy, let's talk about some football. Let's talk about a little bit of NFL football.
Let's do it.
Woo! We had things we were thinking about talking about this morning. We had a list. You sent it out early. We're talking through it, trying to decide what we're going to go with. And then a bombshell hits us. The NFL trading deadline's coming up. And the LA Rams decided that they are all the way in. Now, of course, the Rams have always been all the way in because if you've noticed, and I'll talk about this in a bit, the Rams ain't had draft picks in a while. And this year coming up, it ain't no different. But they decided that they're going to go ahead and get all-pro defensive end. So they traded with the Denver Broncos. The Rams send a second and a third round pick, and they'll receive Von Miller to go on that defensive line right next to your boy Aaron Donald and all the other monsters on the defense. And to make it even easier for the Rams to do this, the Broncos are paying $9 million of the $9.7 million that is due to Von Miller. So the Rams are only on the hook for $700,000 this season. And the best part is Von Miller's a free agent after this year. So Jimmy, because of the magnitude of this move,
Yes.
is it fair to say that the Rams are headed to the Super Bowl?
It is completely unfair to say that they're headed to the Super Bowl. I love, my late father's favorite team was the Rams, so I love seeing this. I always think of Von Miller as he's kind of a hybrid defensive end linebacker. I always think of him as a linebacker. And one of the things that I've said on the show repeatedly is that for a defense to be great, you need a great player at every level of your defense.
Yes.
So on this team, you have Aaron Donald on the line. You have Von Miller who can flex out to linebacker when they want him to.
It's true.
And then you have, obviously, Jalen Ramsey, the best cornerback in the game, or maybe the second best cornerback in the game. Diggs has something to say about that in your secondary. So I love this. I love what they've done on offense. They have that one somewhat of a bad loss to the Cardinals, even though the Cardinals at the time were undefeated, so it may not be a bad loss.
Yeah.
You have Stafford. You have the right coach. You're in L.A. They have everything they need in order to get there. But there's just one thing that bothers me about this team that doesn't regular season bother me, but playoff bothers me. And that's this. In order for the Rams to get to the Super Bowl, Matthew Stafford and that team is going to probably have to get through at least one or two of these quarterbacks. They're going to have to get through Tom Brady, the GOAT, defending champs, or Aaron Rodgers, or Aaron Wick, as apparently he has become now, based upon his Halloween costume. Point. Yeah. So all things being equal, if they get to the playoffs and it's Matthew Stafford against one of those quarterbacks, I'm taking Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady over him every single time. So for that reason, because who he's most likely going to run into as things stand now, I cannot take him over one of those two teams or over one of those two quarterbacks. Therefore, I cannot say that it's fair that this move puts them into the Super Bowl. Maybe the NFC Championship, maybe the NFC Championship, but the Super Bowl, I cannot put them past those two teams.
I am in total agreement with you on this.
Correct.
I have the Rams going to the NFC Championship game, playing against my Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because I have the Rams having the number one seed, which they have zero excuse to even not have the number one seed this season, and going against Tampa and losing in the playoffs, as most people do in the playoffs when it comes to Tom Brady, because you never bet against Tom Brady.
Right.
Now, the question is, will they meet? I don't know. Based upon the way things are lining up, there's a chance they may not. But for the most part, I think that they're going to see each other later on in the playoffs, especially after Tampa Bay had that really bad, in theory, bad loss to the Saints. But it's a rivalry game, beard, mustache, bull. Anyway, I don't think that they're going to make it to the Super Bowl, but I think they can get deep. And this is the reason why. They have a top 4 defense. They have a top 4 offense. They are the third-rated team in DVOA this season, up before this week even passed. Adding Von Miller, to me, doesn't fix a problem that the team actually has. Because if you want me to be honest, I think they have only one problem, is that Matt Stafford doesn't have any playoff wins. Well, many. He has, one? I think he has one.
Something like that, yeah.
I think he has one playoff win, and that's it. It's just that Matt Stafford does not have playoff experience. No shade to Matt. Not saying that he's going to be awful in the playoffs. It's just that he ain't really been. We haven't really got to see him under that type of pressure, except for the one season that Caldwell got him there with the Detroit Lions. So it's not that they can't. I told this to boy Boise Z. I told him this. If the Rams don't win the Super Bowl, it's because of Matt Stafford. The only reason why. Everything's in his hands. Now, the other problem they could have is their running game is a little pedestrian.
I was just thinking about that, yeah. Daryl Henderson.
Cam Akers is gone. You got Daryl Henderson, who I think solid. He's solid.
He's fantasy solid.
Yes, he'll give you fantasy numbers, but he's not dominant enough. People aren't afraid of him.
Right.
Now, defenses are terrified of Cooper Kupp. They're definitely terrified of Robert Woods. Tyler Higbee's out there eating.
He's solid.
They offensively, they got it, and their line is actually pretty solid.
Yeah.
It's going to be about the decision making of Matt Stafford in a lot of pressure. And as long as they have home field throughout it, I think they'll be fine. But at the same time, like I said, the only problem I have is that I've learned a lesson, a very valuable lesson, is don't bet against Tom Brady. Just don't. Just don't when it comes to this, because every time I've taken an L.
Okay, so all right, so I raised you the Packers and the Buccaneers, and how's that work? Never really played poker, so this didn't work out. I see you this?
Yeah,
I raised you
this? Exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to see. I see you, the Packers and the Bucs.
Player, obviously.
At all. I need to learn one day. And I raised you the Dallas Cowboys. If Matthew Stafford and this team came up against the Cowboys with a healthy Dak in the playoffs, would you even take them above them? Because I can't even say that I would do that.
No, and my apologies. Stafford has not won a playoff game. He's taken an L. He lost to the Saints in 11. He lost to the Cowboys in 14. God, he's the one that lost to the Cowboys. Oh, my God.
When was the last time the Lions won a playoff game?
That's a good question, Jimmy.
Is that Wayne Fonts and Barry Sanders? Is that the last time?
It feels like it. I think they had to have one before that. But, yeah, it feels like it. But
okay.
And then, of course, they lost in 17 to the Seattle Seahawks. They lost all of them on the road. Stafford's going to have home field, so that's going to be the good thing for him going up into the Super Bowl. I just don't know what he's going to produce for us in the playoffs yet. I just don't know. As long as because there's no reason why the defense can't do everything. Jalen Ramsey's a monster. Aaron Donald is not even a human being. And then you add Von Miller to the mix, like you said, he could drop back to linebacker and do the pass rush.
And he's a really good leader as well.
Exactly. So they've got 3 levels of dominance potentially if they need it. So
so why are we putting only Matthew Stafford on the hook? Why not his coach Sean McVay?
Because Sean McVay's been to a Super Bowl.
So for that reason, for that reason,
his quarterback was Jared Goff, and he got a Super Bowl. Y'all have seen what Jared Goff looks like this season. I mean, I'm sorry, Jared, but we've seen you synced you this season. Either it's the Lions are just that awful, and Matt Stafford propped them up, or you're awful. It's one of the two, and we don't know. Your coach has already called you out. So I feel bad for him in that capacity. He's already said that we need Jared to step up. Well, Jared can't step up because if he steps up in the pocket, he gets hit.
Yes.
So there's a difference maker there. But I don't know. I still know Stafford in the playoffs yet. And it's not because I don't like Matt Stafford. I don't like to put faith in players like that I haven't seen actually give me the one thing that I haven't seen from him in the 9 years of his career, which is one playoff win. Now, he's had some solid performances. He wasn't awful in these games, but he threw 2 picks against the Saints, which in 2012, the 2011 season, 12, their defense was really solid. Dallas, he was okay, threw for 323 and a touchdown, but then against Seattle, he had 205 and no touchdowns on 32 attempts and 56% completion.
I mean, I think in addition to this, there is a universe where he goes into this game after a really good season, and hopefully he does win the MVP like we predicted.
Yep.
That he goes into a playoff game against one of these teams, plays well, but it's just that those quarterbacks are just better than him.
Yeah.
So it's possible that they could go into this, everything could be clicking, just about everything they need to happen for them to win a playoff game happens, and they still lose. And then it's really no one's fault.
And honestly, if Arizona is healthy, because for the MVP talk, Matt's the front runner now.
Yes.
Kyler's out.
Yes.
And we'll talk about him later. Same thing with Derrick Henry. So most of your MVP candidates are kind of falling down the line besides Tom Brady. Stafford has no excuse not to win it now. Like, Cooper Kupp is unreal right now, like I mentioned. So he should be able to get that. The question is going to be, is this going to be sustainable into the playoffs? And that's really the only question we have. And transitioning from there, Sunday Night Football. So Dak Prescott, adding to the list of people that are down. Actually, both of my fantasy quarterbacks are out, which is
I noticed
awful.
that.
Time to make some trades or pray. But Dak Prescott did not play this past Sunday. The Dallas Cowboys faced the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota on the road.
Yep.
And they pulled out a dub with Cooper Rush as starting quarterback, who went 24 for 40, 325, 2 touchdowns, and 1 INT. They won 20-16. Jimmy, did the Cowboys win this game or did the Vikings lose?
The Cowboys won this game. I mean, they knew going into this game that without their leader, without Dak Prescott, everyone not only had to do their job, but to do their job at an exceeding level than what they normally have to do. Because Dak, when you have a great quarterback like that, he allows for you to just be good enough, to just do your job, and that's enough. He takes care of the rest. But without him, in a sense, they knew that they had to do more. But I think that with the way Cooper Rush played, it's almost like they really didn't have to do more. Now, he's a backup for a reason. He's not Dak Prescott. And once Dak is 100% healthy, which right now Dak is saying that he's going to be healthy to practice Thursday leading into their next game against Denver, I believe, who they should crush. Yeah. So they won this game. They took this game from him. And even from the quarterback position with Cooper Rush, there were certain throws that he made. They were called they were aggressive. They were like win now throws.
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't really anything conservative. And to that point, with how the game was called, with the types of throws that he made, Kellen Moore, they need to move Mike McCarthy out of the head coaching position and put him in there, because if you don't, he's going to be coaching for a different team next season. That's the only way you keep him in the building. Called a masterful game plan.
Oh, yeah, he did. Oh, no,
I 100%
100%.
executed it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, especially, like you said, without having Dak, this Cowboys team is very Dak-centric. We saw it at the beginning of the game, and it kind of materialized later. The defense did their job. They held them to 16 points, especially
really
an offense
really
that's as explosive as the Vikings, even though, what's that, Kirk Cousins is like 8-34 versus teams with winning records, and he's actually winless in prime time, which is why I kind of was thinking you were bold with your pick, and I got it. I got you. But he is winless
Yes.
in prime time.
When it comes down to it, yes, he is.
He is, and that's just we don't get Kirk Cousins, we get Kurt.
I got a new name for him: Cursed Cousins.
Cursed Cousins. I like that, but that offense. I mean, with Jefferson, with Thielen, Dalvin Cook, they have an extremely explosive offense,
Yes.
and the Cowboys were able to contain that. I was very impressed by that, if anything. I thought that they were going to start getting torched because this is the one thing that the Cowboys do. I mentioned this about Diggs. Diggs is one of the, in my power rankings I released last week, the Cowboys defensively is great. The one problem they have, like with Diggs, he leads league in interceptions, but he lives and dies by that interception, which is why he leads the league in yards given up in coverage. He's number 1, and then Anthony Brown is he's number 2. Anthony Brown's number 4.
Right.
They had a bye week last week. So in the bye week, after the bye week was over, they were still 2-4. That tells you they just give up yards. But they live and die, like I said, they live and die by that interception, and that's going to be it can cost you against the wrong team. You do that against Tampa Bay. You do that against Mike Evans. We saw that first game of the season. But I'm talking about later as they develop and they realize, oh, this is what they're going to do. Godwin and Evans are going to eat them alive. So you've got to be able to par that down, or you better have a master for pass rush.
And speaking of the Dallas defense, I'll tell you this, and I didn't truly realize this until this game. If Cooper Rush was the MVP on the offensive side, Randy Gregory is the MVP on the defensive side because he, sacks wise, I mean, he's not getting a lot of sacks, but he's putting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And just like I said a few minutes ago, you need a really good to great player at every level of your defense. We know who their linebacker is in Parsons. We know who Trayvon Diggs is.
Yep.
But Randy Gregory, he has more than filled the void that we thought was going to be left by DeMarcus Lawrence, to where when DeMarcus Lawrence comes back, just put him in opposite Randy Gregory. I don't know I can't recall if Gregory plays on the left or the right, but do not move him. Wherever he is right now, when Lawrence comes back, do
Let
not
him be
move
there.
him. Force Lawrence to play on the opposite side of him, whatever that means, because Randy Gregory, honestly, the way Gregory is playing now, he's getting more pressure on the quarterback than Tank Lawrence has since he signed his contract.
He had 3 QB hits. I need to look up the pressures, but he had 3 hits. Like he's getting there, and that's a big deal. That's something you need for your defense to flourish in this league. You need your line to protect your man, and you need a guy to go get theirs. If you got those two,
Right.
it's a recipe for success. And right now the Cowboys got it. So them boys, if y'all keep doing what y'all doing. Actually, I didn't have the Rams making it to the NFC Championship. I had the Cowboys making it to the NFC Championship. So that's my bad on the last segment. But the only concern I got is when they have to go against the Rams. I don't know at this point.
Okay, so check this out. All right, so the next 2 games are against the Broncos and the Falcons.
Yes.
Right? And we know how important Dak Prescott is to this team, especially coming off that injury and having this recent calf injury in the same leg as he had the catastrophic injury last year. So knowing that it takes teams about 4 games to really get enough tape on a quarterback or a backup, someone that they haven't seen before, in order to make things difficult for them, what do you think about, even if Dak says he's healthy and looks good in practice, at least holding him out for this next game, if this is what Cooper Rush can actually provide for this team, which should be more than enough to beat Denver and Atlanta?
Chubb is still out for the Broncos, isn't he? Brandon Chubb?
I'm not sure.
I think he's still out. I have to look that up really quick. But if they're playing the Broncos, they're playing the Broncos and the Falcons at home. Hell yeah, sit Dak. That's actually a really good thing for them. I don't see Chubb on the injury report. I knew he was for a while, but hey, I would. That actually might not be a bad strategy to where they can make sure that Dak comes back healthy and they're ready to go. So that's actually a damn good point.
Yeah, think about it.
Something to think about. Other things we think about here on Unfair Sports every Monday. Jimmy leads us with the news.
And now Jimmy has the news.
Thank you, Wendy. All right, so Jay, if you were wondering about New Orleans Pelicans star Zion Williamson and his recovery,
I wasn't.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
It's looking like he's progressing, and that from a fractured foot that he had surgery on, and that he's going to be out for at least another 2 to 3 weeks. I know you probably saw the video that had everybody to some degree body shaming Zion Williamson working out before a game a couple of days ago. There's one from practice this morning where he's shooting free throws, but he looks more like himself. Something about that video was just weird, and he was moving around very gingerly. But it looks like we should get Zion back in New Orleans in about a month, I'll say.
That's good. New Orleans needs him. They need to. I want to see them healthy for a year. I don't think Zion's ever going to be healthy, though, like for a full season. I think we'll probably get 60 out of him on a consistent basis, but I don't know. Based upon his early career, I don't know if we can get him past 60. I pray we do, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you see a lot of like load management in his future with good reason. Because he's too important to that franchise, and he's really important to the NBA as far as one of the faces. Hell, he was on NBA 2K along with Dame Lillard last year.
Right.
So I think that they do need to somewhat micromanage him, but I'm really curious to see what he looks like next to Jonas Valanciunas, who's just eating people alive in the middle. That was such a fantastic trade for them with Brandon Ingram, so we'll see what they can do with that. All right, so as many people already know, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, Derrick Henry's foot injury that is going to require surgery is going to keep him out for an extended period of time, potentially for the rest of the season. And it looks like the Titans have been very active today in order to help fill that void as much as possible by signing future Hall of Famer Adrian Peterson to the practice squad with the intention of getting him into the active roster and potentially into the starting lineup. So as someone who we know very well around here,
Boomer,
Sooner. And this is assuming that he's been keeping himself healthy, and I'm sure he has. If he got to this team that quickly, they do a physical. It's going to be great to see him back out there.
Yeah, I mean, dude is a machine. Like, we've always thought that it's ridiculous that he's been as good as he was for as long as he was. So I think that he can be serviceable. He runs a similar style as what they do today. So to be honest, it's actually a really good fit. The only thing about him is that he's old. I mean, he's old in football years. And that's probably your only concern is if at his age, is he really going to really contribute?
I agree. And I think that them being this proactive and this aggressive shows the rest of that team, especially off of that win yesterday, that gutsy win that they had yesterday in Indianapolis, that they're still all in on this season, that the AFC is very much up and down at the top from week to week. So they've got just as good of a chance as anyone. Well, they did obviously have a much better chance with Derrick Henry, but they can at least stay in the mix with Adrian Peterson. So I do really like that signing, and I'm curious to get him back out there, see what he looks like.
Yeah.
All right, so lastly, if you have a chance, can you call your boy KD and see what's going on with him? Not that he had a tough weekend. They won their games this weekend, but one game he got fined $25,000 for throwing the ball into the stands, and it looked like somewhat of an accident, which $25,000 for that particular infraction seems excessive. And he was thrown out of the game yesterday on a flagrant 2 for giving the forearm shiver to the side of the head of Kelly Olynyk, who is a bit of a dirty player, but it seemed unnecessary. They went ahead and won the game by over 20 points anyway, but talk to that boy.
Yeah. You good, KD? Right. Nah, I mean, real talk, man, because you got flamed pretty hard on Twitter a couple days ago. We ain't really seen you much since you got flamed by Dragonfly Jones when you came at him on the bird for no reason.
Oh, really?
Oh, he came for Dragonfly Jones. This is basically what happened. This is the interaction. Dragonfly Jones said that he loves Kyrie's game, but Hoopers love Kyrie's game, as in Hooper, he's a Hooper's Hooper. And that's basically what it was. Kyrie is a Hooper's Hooper.
Right.
I love Kyrie's game, but Hoopers love Kyrie's game. So Kevin Durant jumped in his mentions and said, "'Cause you're a casual." He called him a casual. So Dragonfly Jones replied right back, "A fully vaccinated casual." And we ain't heard from KD since. And I think ever since then, he has been in his head. So I blame Dragonfly Jones for this one. Shout out to Dragonfly Jones for getting in his head like this. Yeah. But I think that's who we're going to blame it on.
That's as good as what I got. Yes.
Is that it?
It's it. Snooze.
And that was Jimmy with the news.
Thank you, Bob.
Oh, man.
All right.
Casual.
Okay, so how is this? All right, so he says Hoopers love Kyrie's game. Kevin Durant calls him a casual. What about that did he think Dragonfly Jones was saying, that Hoopers don't love your game because they love Kyrie's game? Like, where's the diss in that?
Right. He came out assuming that he was dissing Kyrie. And nothing about what he said was a diss to Kyrie at all. Like, it literally, he said that I love his game. But Hoopers love his game, as if like Hoopers just have even more enamored by what Kyrie does.
A greater appreciation.
Exactly. But KD just he decided to jump in the mentions and say that. And then when he called him, because he had the finger emoji on there and said a fully vaccinated casual. And of course the internet erupted.
Okay, I get it. So then that gets in his head about, dang, this would have been so much easier with Kyrie here. I know this may not cost us now, but it's going to cost us later. So he's aggravated and frustrated.
The Kyrie situation is bothering him, and he doesn't want to admit it.
He doesn't know what to do because he wants to, he has his loyalty to Kyrie Irving, but at the same time, he understands how this is going to affect things on the basketball end.
As we're diving into this, James Harden said that man's full government name when he was talking about him. Well, Kyrie Irving, we decide what Kyrie Irving wants to do, and it's kind of like no one ever said no. There's no Kai, there's no Kyrie.
Right.
There was no. It was the full government. I'm surprised he threw his middle name in there. He threw his middle name in there, and it's like, all right, James Harden's out. I think James Harden's out on the situation, but that's a conversation for another day because as we get more into the NBA, it's going to be a lot more to talk about. So with that,
I mean, Hoopers love Kevin Durant's game too.
They do. He's just mad. He mad to be mad, dog.
He needs a dog or something to show him love every day.
He needs a
for real
something. So anyway, we jump to the next one.
Right? Can afford that. Yeah. Yeah. Get me off of this. Let's go.
Jimmy's like, I'm done with this mess. College football, which is of course been a season. We have the Oklahoma Sooners pulled out that big victory against Texas Tech, 52 to what? 21. And then Georgia went out and in theory dog walked Florida 34 to 7. It had me asking the question of what do we need to do to get Oklahoma versus Georgia in these playoffs. So let's recap the games and we'll talk about that on the back end. So Oklahoma offense was on it. Defense did their job for the most part throughout it. They did what they should. They kept their hands up. They deflected passes. They turned the oven on. We got turnovers. That's what you want. You want those turnovers. And the more turnovers you get, the better your team's going to play. Especially when you got a quarterback like Caleb Williams who's out there throwing 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. It was a game that was just chef's kiss. His passes were on point. He was elusive and slippery. I'm in the stands just screaming like, this is the growth that I didn't expect for about 4 more games. Jimmy, 402, 6 touchdowns. How impressed were you with this performance by OU?
Well, from a reading the box score standpoint, since I did not see the game, it's in a way it's not impressive because this is what OU fans have come to expect from this type of offense, especially when you have a quarterback this dynamic. So it's impressive in the sense that this is what we had been seeing, and we didn't know if we were going to see performances like this throughout the rest of the season, how the majority of their wins have been close games, very un-OU-like. So to see this, it's like, okay, they're back on track. This is business as usual. This is what OU football on offense is supposed to look like. So there's a sense of not only comfort to that, but anticipation in the sense that if this offense can continue to play this way, then like we're going to talk about, we just might get exactly what we're looking for in the college football playoff.
That's true. And the funny thing is this is really un-OU-like in this game. And I think that's what makes it most impressive to me. They had 72 rushing yards. That is not OU. It's not OU offense. I mean, even with the high passing yards, OU always has about 100-something yards rushing, combination of quarterback and running. You usually get all of that. You didn't get that. Kennedy Brooks had 8 carries the entire game. Marcus Major had 5, and that's because at the end of the game, Caleb had to scramble 5 times, and then I think he had like 2 design runs, and then Eric Gray had a couple runs. So it was opposite of what we're accustomed to with the rushing side. Because Caleb, you can tell he wasn't looking to run. He was looking to scramble to get a good pass off, and he did masterfully with that.
What this is. So that's a within game bye week for the running backs. Because if they see, because they can see just how much he's picking apart the defense as well. So they're like, well, I mean, why would you feed us when you don't have to? Just give us, especially at that running back position and how many hits you take all game long. Yeah, give him a rest. I mean, Texas Tech has nothing in their secondary. that can stop this team. So give them a rest.
Yeah, and it looked like it. I mean, Texas Tech is not a bad team. They're gonna make a bowl game, even though they just fired their head coach, right? Because they knew that they're gonna take a whole bunch of L's moving forward. But they'll win one more game that'll get them make them bowl eligible. They're 5-4 right now. The defense did their job. Like I said, the biggest part about the defense doing their portion of it is that they turned that oven on. What I mean by turn the oven on, they got the bakery going. The line started putting their hands up. And that's the one thing I've always complained about OU's defense is that the linebackers and the defensive line doesn't throw their hands up enough. Get a tip. If you tip the ball and it just flounders around, somebody's going to snatch it up. And that's what happened with those two picks. Both of them were off deflection. It was picture perfect. So then you go to the other side. You got Georgia versus Florida. Oh my God, Jimmy. Oh my God. I don't understand how this is possible. And I feel like we're kind of underrating how ridiculously good the Georgia Bulldogs defense is. Let me tell you about this game. I know you looked at the box and play-by-play. I watched a lot of the game. Let me explain something to you that happened in this game. Florida led in yards by 1 yard. 352 to 353, 355 to 354. So Florida had more yards than Georgia in this game, in which Florida's outgained every team they played against, but that's neither here nor there. Time of possession, 32 to 27. So the time of possession was all Florida. Florida was out there. Georgia scored 21 points in 21 seconds. And guess what they don't have? An actual good offense. Like, no shade to Georgia fans. And, y'all were in the last video, and we appreciate all of that, and you guys understand what we're saying. Your team isn't set on offense. It's defense. Stetson Bennett did not play very good in this game. Or Barnett, whatever his name is. He didn't play very well. Bennett, I was right. Stetson Bennett did not play very well in this game. He was 10 for 19, 161, a touchdown, 2 picks. Florida got 3 turnovers in this game. Georgia got 3 turnovers in this game. You know the difference between the two? Georgia scored after every turnover that they got. Florida turned the ball over after every turnover they got. That's basically what happened in this game. That was the feeling behind it. Like I said, they scored 3 touchdowns in 21 seconds, Jimmy. 21 points, 21 seconds. After they turn the ball over from Florida, they go score on one play. Next play, Florida got on the field. Turn the ball over. Georgia scores in one play. The next time, Florida throws a pick 6. And this was all it basically just separated it in the second quarter. So that defense is ridiculous. The offense, Zamir White, solid. He had 100 yards rushing on 14 carries. So 7 yards a carry is not bad. They have enough, but they know that they can just lean on their defense to do all the work. And their defense is just absurdly good. And it's funny, in the presser, Kirby Smart and Dan Mullins kind of talked about the differences between the two teams. You know the big difference between the two, right? Kirby said it. You can't out-coach recruiting. You can't out-coach stars. If you want to win, you got to have stars. That's a paraphrase of what Kirby Smart said, but he basically said you cannot out-recruit. You can't out-coach recruits, good recruits. And Dan Mullen, I don't think he wants to recruit or knows how to. So when you looked at this, what jumped out to you in this game?
Well, it's not so much the game itself. It's how the game fits into how their season has looked so far. I tried to think of a stat without getting too next-gen analytics about it that really encompasses how great this defense is. And before I give you that stat, you think about it this way. You think about how I always go to really I've learned there's 2 things that a great defense has to have. Besides having a great player at every level of the defense, they have to apply pressure.
Yes.
Constantly. Without having to blitz. That's something that's been evident of any great defense you've ever seen in the history of college football, and a truly great defense, history of college football, history of the NFL. They all have that one thing in common: pressure, constant pressure, because that leads to turnovers, that leads to miscues, all the things that the offense doesn't want to happen. Pressure creates those things.
Yep.
So the stat I came up with, really simple and easy. You can do it yourself in your head or with a calculator. I wanted to know how many points a game this team has given up this season in 8 games. They're averaging 6.6 points given up in this game, which they gave up, 7 to Florida? In college football, 6.6 points a game. Whether it's recruiting, schematics, whatever it is. Drugs, alcohol, video games. There is no answer for a defense that is not going to give you more than about 7 points a game. I think the most they've given up this year is 13 to South Carolina. there is absolutely positively no answer to that.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's kind of the biggest problem. Yeah, they gave up 13. They gave up 13 to South Carolina, 13 to Kentucky, Kentucky 10 to Auburn.
Everybody else 7 or less.
Yep. 7 or less, and that's basically how they play. This is the crazy stat that I saw within them as far as defenses goes. And now this kind of makes me this is where my excitement comes in for OU versus Georgia.
Yeah,
They play each other.
I got something for that. Yeah.
This is what got my attention. Georgia is giving up 3.76 yards per play. That is the lowest in college football. They also have given up 6 total touchdowns. 5 offensive, 6 total touchdowns. The next person to them in total touchdowns is Toledo at 12. They've given up half as many touchdowns as Toledo and Penn State at 12. They're second in yards per game to Wisconsin, who has a really good defense. But yards per play, 3.76, obscenely dominant. That's dominance. Oklahoma on the other side, though, is number 3 in college football in yards per play at 7.25, right behind Coastal Carolina and Ohio State. They've scored 47 touchdowns, which is number 1 in the country, but they're 14th in yards per game at 477. So they kind of pull the reins back. And then shout out to the Sooner fans who were very classy. As the game was getting blown out, the fans started chanting Rattler, Rattler. They put in Spencer Rattler. And they all cheered very loudly for Spencer when he went out there. Spencer went 5 for 5, 60-something yards, and a touchdown, and everyone was ecstatic.
That's a bit of an apology.
It's basically an apology that, hey, we wanted you on the bench. We don't want you gone from the team type situation. So looking at that comparison of the dominance of OU's offense and Georgia's defense, who you got? You got OU's offense? Or would you take Georgia's defense?
I'll take Georgia's defense because the only way to withstand that type of pressure is you have to have a great offensive line. And OU has had great offensive lines in the recent past, but I don't think they do this year. Now, it would take some, I won't say a miracle, but it would take some NFL, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan level game planning in order to work with that, in order to design a game plan that incorporates the kind of pressure that you're going to get. So it is possible. I think if anybody in college football can do that is Lincoln Riley, but it would have to be some type of changes on the offensive line. Not that their offensive line is bad. Their offensive line is good, but in order to take on this type of team, you would have to make some changes. Now, I believe the first rankings of the College Football Playoff Committee come out tomorrow evening, right? Here's what they need to do. It's very simple, very easy. Certain things we already know. What they've got to do is they've got to figure out a way. Well, they don't have to figure this out. Georgia's going to do it themselves. Georgia's going to stay in the 1 spot. They've got to make sure OU stays in the 2nd or 3rd spot because you want this type of matchup, this type of great offense versus great defense matchup. If you can get it in the college football playoff at all, it's a victory. But the bigger W is if you can get that in your championship game, especially against a team that has a brand like OU.
Yeah.
So you keep them in that 2 or 3 spot. Keep Alabama at the keep Alabama at the 4. I guess you would have Cincy at 2 or 3, OU at 2 or 3. Keep them there because what's going to happen is Alabama's going to win out, Georgia's going to win out. Georgia's going to beat Alabama in the SEC championship, and then you will move in either Michigan State if they stay undefeated or Ohio State if they don't lose any more games. Then you face them in the first round. You have OU and Cincy, which I think would actually be a fun game.
Oh, yeah.
In that 2-3 spot. Both teams win, and then you get them in your final. That's what you need. That's the best television show.
I agree with you. The question is going to be, what does Oklahoma look like against Oklahoma State in that Bedlam game? Oklahoma State actually has a pretty good freaking defense this year. They are the 7th-ranked defense in yards per game this season. They're only giving up 4.65 yards per play, which is good for 10th. And they're barely giving up any touchdowns. 14 touchdowns, 16 total.
It's perfect.
So,
it's perfect for OU because that's a really good test. That's a really good warm-up for some version of what you're going to see in the college football playoff if you make it to Georgia. So it's going to be a tough game. It's a rivalry game. It's a bedlam game. We know that.
In Stillwater, too.
So you're looking at maybe for OU maybe 7-10, maybe 10 to 14-point victory. Not a 30-point victory, but you're looking more at that. But that's okay. This will train you. This will help to prepare you for what you're going to see.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I would take Georgia's defense. If the game was played, I think I'm going to take Oklahoma, not only being a homer, but OU's defense is way better than Georgia's offense.
That's
I
interesting.
think that's going to
interesting.
be the difference maker. Now, if Caleb goes out there and just get willy-nilly and just giving the ball up to everybody, you got a problem. But, like you said, the pass rush with Georgia is ridiculous, but
Right.
Caleb is slippery. Like, he's shown that against everybody.
All right, so to that point about Caleb, now tell me this. When you incorporate his leadership, his maturity, his decision-making, do you see 2019 Trevor Lawrence in Caleb Williams? The same Trevor Lawrence who, as a true freshman, as a teenager, went in a college football final against Alabama and boat raced them. Do you see Caleb Williams being able to do that? Because that's exactly as a 19-year-old that he's going to have to do if they face this Georgia team. And we know how this game can go. We've been around Georgia fans at an OU game. We know how crazy
We need
things can get.
revenge. We need revenge.
I didn't think about that. That's true.
We need revenge.
Yes.
Forget that. And I think in this situation, if it gets to where, because that Georgia defense was ridiculously good too.
It was.
They had a really good defense that year. They were down 31-14 at the half. That to me, and this is what I think I saw in this Texas Tech game, is that because Lincoln Riley didn't pull Caleb out until late in the fourth, mid fourth. He's going to keep the gas going, and that's what's most important. If he takes his foot off the gas, you need to take Texas model: all gas, no brakes. Literally, you need to score nonstop, piss off everybody. If you can put 100 on somebody, put 100 on somebody. There's no excuse not to if you have the capabilities to, because if you try to pull up on these type of teams, their defense is going to slow you down. The clock's not going to run like the way you want it to. They're going to get the ball and they're going to have a chance. And the last thing you want to do is put your gassed defense on their offense, because it never works when your defense is gassed, in which we saw at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena in person. So that's football gods. Give us Oklahoma, do your part. Georgia, do your part. Give us Oklahoma, Georgia in the national championship.
All right, so Jay, it's fitting that it was Halloween weekend because as far as the Frozen 5, it was a weekend of horrors for me.
Oh, God, yeah.
One of my worst performances in a very long time. Went 1-4. I'm going to give the 4 L's first, then go into the 1 dub. First L, you had the Colts -1 at home against the Titans. It was working out perfectly. Just exactly what I thought was going to happen in this game outside of the fast start happened, except that Carson Wentz turned into Philadelphia Eagles bad Carson Wentz and coughed up a turnover, a pick six actually at the end of the fourth, and an interception in overtime, which allowed the Titans to drive down, get a field goal, game over, especially given that Derrick Henry was hobbled. I think he only had 68 rushing yards. It was all there for them, staying pace in the division. All that's over with now. Thank you, Carson Wentz. I believed in you, and I don't anymore. Next pick.
Dang.
One of my worst picks ever. I had the Jags plus 3.5 in Seattle, coming off of a bye. I like the way they look in London 2 weeks prior. I thought Urban Meyer had put that foolishness in his personal life behind him, or at least other stories had taken our attention.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter. They looked like a rookie team with a rookie coach and a rookie quarterback. They looked terrible. Geno Smith looked like Warren Moon, and there was no chance in that game after the first quarter. I'm embarrassed by you, Jaguars. I'm never betting on you again. I don't care if I'm getting plus 30. Screw you, bad pick, never again. Up next, now this surprised me. In a way, it shouldn't have, but it did. The Bucks had the Bucks -5.5 on the road in the Saints against the Saints. If I was going to take this game, I probably should have taken it at home because Brady, outside of the playoffs, and maybe even in that playoff game if they won last season, has really struggled against this Saints team. Even though it's a small sample size, it was big enough for me to be able to see. I probably should have laid off of this game. He just does not play well against this team. He was fooled on a fourth quarter drive in order to that was to win the game, wasn't it? Brady doesn't throw picks. He barely throws incomplete passes. He was fooled. He didn't know exactly what he was looking at. And there were spots that was happening throughout the game. Couldn't believe it. I mean, maybe 1 in 100 games it happens, but this happened to be that one game. I should have known.
The game that I needed him to give me a game-winning drive, he didn't.
And we lost hundreds. Anyway. So, tough victory. They'll bounce back. He's still the GOAT, but
true.
Lost Bucks -5.5. Last L was when we had talked about, had the Vikings plus 1.5. I felt like all the things were working together in order for Kirk Cousins to not be cursed Cousins as he is now and win this game, especially once it was declared that Dak was out. But Cooper Rush, he looked like the quarterback who should be getting paid what Kirk Cousins is getting paid, and Kirk Cousins looked like he should be getting paid what Cooper Rush is getting paid. Should have known. He's burned us multiple times this season alone. Should have stayed off of them, but it felt really good. I still think there were spots where they could have covered the spread, but Kirk Cousins was Kirk Cousins, and not that he played a bad game. He just didn't do enough to elevate his team beyond that touchdown that he threw to Adam Thielen, I think on their first drive. So that was embarrassing, but shout outs to the Cowboys. They took it. They played well. Everybody contributed. Fantastic victory for them. My only W was my own San Francisco 49ers covering a 4-point spread, winning 33-22. Jimmy G, playing in his home state, had 2 rushing touchdowns, over 300 yards, because he was playing for his job. And the rookie running back, Elijah Mitchell, has asserted himself as the lead back in this backfield. He was like a 5th or 6th round pick. So he played well, as well as Deebo Samuel, who teams just don't have an answer for. Just a guy who's a running back in the wide receiver position.
His name's Deebo.
Right, exactly. Snatching chains all over the field. So they got me my 1W. So we went 1-4. Jay, I'm sure you would get us back on the winning train, and then I could follow in your wake after that. So 1-4. I don't see that happening again this season, but that is what happened.
Yeah, hopefully I can get us to a 5-0 week. And
yes,
pull us back into our standard way of play. But
yes. So, continuing with the weekend of horrors that we saw, as far as injuries in the NFL,
oh my God.
And not just injuries, because we see that every week in the NFL. We're talking about impactful, season-altering injuries. So, for instance, you had Derrick Henry with the foot, and they pray it's not a Jones fracture, because that is a season-ending injury. He's going to have surgery. We'll know more later. You have Jameis Winston tearing his ACL and suffering MCL damage as well in the game against the Bucs, so he's out for the season. Have been having a really good season. 14
all from the horse collar tackle that they've been trying to get rid of.
Exactly.
People were blinded by they didn't grab inside the middle back of his shoulder pads. They're like, no, that's not a horse collar. No, that included the back part of the shoulder pads. They didn't want you to grab underneath the pad there or up here. If you read the rule, that the reason why it's there is because of this type of injury. It twists people up.
Yep, hated it. Kyler Murray in the Thursday night game suffered a high ankle sprain, I believe, in that last drive. It was a pretty bad looking high ankle sprain as well. Yep. In the route to losing their first game against the Packers. Daniil Hunter, the anchor of that Vikings defense that we saw last night, has a torn pec. He most likely will be out for the season and was out for all of last season as well with a neck injury. And then you have Dak Prescott still with that calf injury that's lingered over the last couple of weeks, who was out in this game, maybe beyond that. So of these 5 injuries, these 5 impactful injuries, Jay, which would you say is the most impactful?
Derrick Henry. That Titans team is centered around everything that Derrick Henry does. Like, he is the MVP. I mean, he leads the league in rushing. I think the next closest person was
like 450 yards away.
Roughly.
Hey, what is this?
That's how, right, exactly. Looking at us like, dude, what is this? Like, this is not, this ain't even fair this season. But no, he's their team, and they need him. And that's kind of where I feel like without him, Julio's hurt. Didn't I say that Julio was going to have an injury issue at his age?
There we go.
I swore to God I told Titans fans this, and they hate me for it. But Julio's down. You're losing Derrick Henry. Now you got to rely everything's now on the shoulders of Ryan Tannehill. And I don't know how much faith I would put in Tannehill, because this season he has not been looking very good. You can tell that he misses his OC. And that was kind of what I thought was going to happen when Arthur Smith left. Arthur was pretty creative with him. He let Tannehill do his own thing. Now the new play caller, it's not looking as good. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. Even adding Adrian Peterson, and I like Adrian Peterson as an addition to this roster. He does have a similar run set up as the way Derrick Henry runs, and Derrick Henry he almost has 1,000 yards rushing already in halfway through the season.
He was going to break Eric Dickerson's record this year.
He probably was 937 with Joe Mixon right behind him. Joe Mixon, good Lord, at 572. That's a gap. And it also tells you about usage. That's a high usage percentage. I think he touches the ball 96% of the time on the field or something like that.
It's crazy.
That's absurd when I saw that stat. But anyway, if all of them, Derrick Henry, I think he's the most significant. What you got?
I'm going to say it's Kyler Murray.
Ooh.
Particularly because he's at the quarterback position. And I know you just enumerated all the many reasons why Derrick Henry's injury is going to impact this Titans team in a negative way. So, I mean, all that's totally true, and that's going to they're not going to be able to get through the playoffs without him. I understand that. But with Kyler Murray with a high ankle sprain, for one, it's the worst kind of ankle sprain you can have between a high and a low. And I think it was either Schefter or Glazer who said it's a 1 to 3 week injury. But those high ankle sprains, you have to really be careful with them. They can linger throughout the season, and they take longer to heal as opposed to a low ankle sprain. And someone like Kyler Murray, who has just this incredible mobility, and it's a big part of how he buys himself time. I mean, he needs his ankles both. He needs them both 100% in order to do what he does. So I think that between him being the quarterback, between this type of injury, the one thing that maybe mitigates that a little is that he's young, which presumes that he will be able to heal from it faster, as opposed to like when LeBron James got the same injury last year and he was out like a month and a half, maybe longer. So I get that.
he was gone.
But I think particularly with them losing J.J. Watt, I mean, anywhere J.J. Watt goes, he immediately becomes the leader and the alpha dog in that locker room or on that defense. So losing him, and if you'll notice, Chandler Jones played in this game against the Packers, but you wouldn't have noticed it because he didn't do anything.
Nope.
Because that shows you the impact, the intangible impact that missing J.J. Watt has. So since you're missing him, you needed Kyler Murray out there to help make up for that, and now he's not going to be out there for a few weeks. You only have one loss. You're still a playoff team. You're still good, but I think that the health of his ankle, the effects of that is going to reverberate throughout the rest of the season, just like his shoulder injury last year did. He came back, but he was never the same, and that's a big part of the reason why they didn't go further after a blazing start in September and October. So I see the exact same thing happening.
That was my biggest concern with Arizona, was that Kyler health is it's a cause for concern. He hasn't stayed healthy, like you said. He hurt it. His shoulder was sore this year. After, I guess, from last year, his shoulder was a little sore one of those games, and they were saying that he was out there kind of winding it up, but he ended up still playing it well. But their starting quarterback now is going to be, it looks like, Colt McCoy.
So that's where he is.
Yes, he is still in the league. So we're going to see the Colt McCoy machine over the next couple of weeks, and we'll see if that leads to anything, as Kyler is still working from that left ankle injury. But like you said, it's a 1 to 3 week injury. We don't know if he's going to be done, but I could totally see that. The Dak injury is a little worrisome because it is the calf on the same side.
He was number 2 on my list. Yeah.
Yes, on the same side as that ankle he hurt. I'm hoping it's not like an Achilles extending down to that. Seems like it's not, because he was moving around and he looked comfortable while he was preparing. He just was a little too uncomfortable to be able to play. So, like you said, if they let him rest for 2 weeks, I think they'll be fine. But that Kyler injury on top of J.J. Watt being down, that I mean, that's 2 anchors for your team that could really hurt.
So speaking of which, real quick, given the injury to Kyler Murray and to Jameis Winston, do you see either one of those teams giving Cam Newton a call?
So I saw a report that the Saints are not going to call Cam, but they need to, because Taysom Hill's coming off a concussion, and I think he's coming back this week. But that doesn't guarantee that you're going to want to start Taysom Hill every week without, because Jameis is done. And
they had Trevor Siemian in there. He played good. He played well enough to win this game.
Siemian played very good.
He was good.
And to be absolutely honest, Siemian's probably their best option. He's kind of like he's got like a Drew Brees type setup. The throws reminded me of Drew Brees. When Drew Brees was younger and was throwing deeper, he's not as accurate, or he doesn't make the same decisions as him. But I think Trevor Siemian can do a really good job in this offensive setup, because Sean Payton's a freaking genius. Period. He's a genius.
Yeah, and Sean Payton needs more credit with how this team has played against the Tom Brady Bucks these last couple of seasons. I mean, he is really good. He's really underrated coach.
He is very much underrated. So we'll see what happened with the Saints. I'm sad. I'm really sad for Jameis. I was loving the Jameis revenge tour. I was having a blast watching
14
it.
touchdowns, I think 3 picks, something like that.
Yes, he was playing good.
He
wasn't putting out the yards to get into the season, but I think that was more so them trying to figure out how they want to run the offense. And at the same time, who's their receivers? Right.
Me.
Right.
I play for them.
Exactly. It's a whole bunch of young people that we don't really know about yet, and that we need for them to grow. If they get Michael Thomas back, I think they'll be fine later. And I think they'll make a playoff push. They probably won't make it, though.
All right, Jay, before we wrap it up and put a bow on it, let's venture to the NBA. And I got to tell you this. I won't say it's a new show, but the new setup on ESPN, NBA Today, with Malika Andrews and
the panelist of everybody.
Yeah, the panelist of everybody. you know, what you want in a show, whether it's NBA, NFL, whatever it is after watching that show, I should want to watch a game from that sport.
Yeah.
This is a really good show. I was watching it earlier today, and just with the topics and just the presentation of the show, I'm like, dang, I'm ready for some NBA tonight. It's a really good show. So speaking of which, in the NBA, it's been an interesting season so far. We're 2 weeks into it. I've enjoyed it. I imagine many of you have as well. And we've seen some surprises as far as how certain teams have performed thus far in the NBA season. You have 4 teams at 5-1 in the Eastern Conference and 2 teams at 5-1 in the Western Conference. In the East, you have the Knicks, you have the Bulls, the Heat, and the Wizards at 5-1 of all teams. And in the West, you have the Warriors and the Jazz at 5-1 as well. So with those two, between those two conferences, just between those 6 teams, is it fair or unfair to say that one or more of these teams will end up as a top 2 seed in their conference?
Oh, it's fair. I think it's 100% fair. I have Utah leading the West. They are the perfect regular season team because it seems like that's the only thing they care about. Because then you just scheme Rudy Gobert off the court and they lose, especially in the playoffs. But I do see the Jazz as getting a 1 or 2 seed. Honestly, I can see Golden State maintaining this because they're getting healthy. Clay's coming. They'll even be more healthy. They'll look even more ridiculous. But on the East, I think it's fair as well. Miami. I told y'all about Miami 2 years ago when they went to the finals. The next year they were really bad, and I think the reason they were bad was similar to why the Lakers and a lot of the other teams that went deep into the playoffs were bad. They were exhausted. The season did not end. The human body has limits, and they hit those limits. They got that rest. They got a lot of rest because they didn't make the playoffs. Now they're back on it. Adding Kyle Lowry was easy because they are just a hustle grind team in general. Adding him with Bam Adebayo and a healthy Jimmy Butler, bro. I think Miami's going to give Milwaukee problems again. Just put it like that. And right now, Milwaukee's 3-4. Not even going to make the playoffs. Yikes.
Yeah, they haven't won a home game this year, Milwaukee.
Oh, God.
Too much champagne still on the court.
Oh, boy.
I hate it when we completely agree. Because it is like, okay, where do we go from here? But yeah, I completely agree. Jazz, like you said, totally built for the regular season. They love it. It's their baby. It makes them feel good about themselves. It's their championship. It makes them feel good about themselves. And then the inevitable happens. Then they activate the Rudy Gobert button game plan, and then it's all over. So you have that. And the Heat as well. I think, for me, the Heat, they're one of the best defensive teams. And they really have been, because when you're on a team with Jimmy Butler, that's pretty much what you have to be in order to be at his level. But I think they're one of the best defensive teams in the East as well.
They were 2 years ago in the bubble.
Okay, exactly.
Yeah, that's who they are. They're a defensive squad.
And they're very focused. They play hard. They don't beat themselves. I mean, if they continue to play this way, forget pushing Milwaukee. They can beat Milwaukee playing this way.
I think they can beat Brooklyn, too.
And you know what? You know who they need to beat? The Heat. They need to be the Rams of the NBA in the sense that we really like where we're at. We don't necessarily need any more than what we've got, but if we get a little bit more, that just makes us even more dangerous. That just makes things even better. Yeah.
The question is, who can they trade for or acquire in free as an unrestricted free agent that's going to want it off their team? Who can they go yank?
Whoever it is, Pat Riley will find them.
That's true.
That's what he's always been, an aggressive GM, and that's part of the reason why they have the championships that they have. So yeah, I agree with those two. I don't think the Knicks or the Wizards are going to be there. Wizards, they're playing with a lot of chips on their shoulder just from the LA trade and such. But it's good for them because they got to keep Bradley Beal there if they want to be a viable franchise. With the Knicks, I didn't believe in them when we did the preview show. I think that they're going to fall. I mean, obviously, they're still going to be a playoff team, so I did underestimate them somewhat.
Yeah.
So I could see them falling to 5 or 6. Playing hard every night in defense gets you at least no further than 6 seed.
Yeah.
But this Bulls team, and I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch this Bulls team play all the way through. Billy Donovan as their coach does bother me, but there's nothing not to like about their starting roster, which we've talked about before. So I could see the Bulls team really pushing that as well. The Warriors, I feel like they're still a bit too Steph dependent. I mean, that's a big part of the reason why there's so much value in Klay Thompson. And Jordan Poole, he's done a good job filling in for Klay, but I mean, there's only one Klay.
He's not Klay, right?
So I think that they're going to fall a little bit as well because there's so much on Steph Curry's shoulders. Well, I mean, Steph Curry and Draymond, but more so on the offensive end, Steph Curry to truly be that engine. So they'll fall some. They're still going to be in the playoffs. I think I picked them to go to the Western Conference Finals against the Lakers.
I have to look up, but
against the Lakers, something like that. But but Jazz definitely. It's almost like, too, besides the Rudy Gobert playing in the playoffs, their defense is not as good in the playoffs either, because that's a big part of what they live by in the regular season is that stifling defense, but it's not as good in the playoffs for some reason.
It's because everybody gets him off the court. I mean, you can scheme around Rudy Gobert, and a lot of teams don't show their cards in the season.
Right.
They'll go out there and play. They'll let Stifle Tower do its thing. He'll go win Defensive Player of the Year. Woo, woo. They'll have him converse about him as an MVP. Oh, man, he should win MVP. It's nothing about what he does should be MVP. He should remain as a top defender. But teams prepare themselves for what they know they're going to get out of him. Start scheming, bring him out, force him out, and then what I'm surprised is nobody's went up and just tried to start yamming on him. I'm waiting for somebody to just try to dunk on him all the time and really just make it happen. But yeah,
why don't the Jazz get proactive? If you know that in the playoffs they're going to space the floor, they're going to move Rudy Gobert out. Why don't you go get another 5 who you would put in who can actually shoot the ball? Right? Why don't you do that in order to offset that?
That's a good question.
Right. Because, I mean, the time to be aggressive is not later. The time to be aggressive is right now. If you really want to win a championship, like you said, if that franchise and their ownership is perfectly fine where things are financially because they're really good in the regular season, then don't do anything. I mean, just get what you normally get and you'll be perfectly fine. But if they really want to compete for a championship in a Western Conference that isn't going to be settled all season long because just about anybody can beat anybody in the right matchup, I think they need to get aggressive too. That's what it's going to come down to. Who are going to be the aggressive teams in the NBA early instead of later?
Yeah, that's true. That's probably the biggest issue. The question is who's gonna make a move right at the trade deadline to start shifting things around. I do like seeing that the Wizards are out there hooping and
I love it,
looking happy.
And you know what? And I was telling
carefree.
I was telling this to Chris at the barbershop. We've talked about how he feels about Russell Westbrook. So we've talked about how they could have had Buddy Hield over Russell Westbrook and what the consequences are of that. But just think about this. And I hated this because I love Trez Harrell, and the way he was treated by the Lakers I thought was terrible as far as how they played him. If you had Trez Harrell at the 5, AD at the 4, Kuzma at the 3, Bron is your point guard, and who the F ever is your shooting guard, who can contend with that lineup that they would have had or that they should have been using last season?
I think didn't Trez regress last year?
He didn't get any playing time. He didn't have time enough to get into a rhythm.
I think that was probably wise. He just wasn't very good in in practice or in the games he did play.
He's a monster right now. He's back to being old Trez.
He is. I think he's better in situations where he can get the ball in his hands. That's the one thing about playing with a player like LeBron or even like Anthony Davis. The ball has to go through them, and that kind of throws a lot of things off. Ball-centric guys like him makes it tough for you to play. Westbrook is ball-centric, but Westbrook also gets rid of the ball and gives passes up all the time. He usually turns the ball over himself when he's going on drives on his own. But for the most part, he dishes the rock. He gives it away. So that's your difference. And at the same time, this gives Bron opportunity to take some games off. He can actually rest himself. And then Westbrook can go out there and just be buck wild and go 110 like he always does because they needed another playmaker. And they didn't have another playmaker with any of those other guys. Kuzma got to play basketball with them. It was just beard, mustache, but it was weird. So
yeah,
we'll see. But out of those 6, I'm totally with Utah getting there. I think Golden State possibly can, and I am sold on Miami.
Me too.
I am definitely sold on the Bulls. The Baby Bulls are no longer the Baby Bulls. I like what they're doing.
Yeah.
Can't wait to talk more NBA later in the season. Not right now. They ain't really talk about them right now because we're in football season and all of that. So, Jimmy, what's on the 80 room floor?
All right, so what didn't make it into the floor? All right, so you're a Bucks fan. We know that. So Bruce Arians, I think someone had asked him about potentially trading running back Ronald Jones as the trade deadline looms, 4 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. And he said that it would take a serious offer in order for them to get rid of Ronald Jones, which I don't understand because after having had him on several fantasy teams, he's not been good this year. Uncle Lenny is clearly your feature back, and you have Gio Bernard as a change of pace. So you really honestly don't need Ronald Jones unless something were to happen to Leonard Fournette. But why would it take that much when you can probably get a pretty decent guy in the secondary to offset those injuries for Ronald Jones? So I don't get this.
Trade him to Denver right now and get Fuller, get a corner, get Kyle Fuller, get a corner, get somebody in the secondary to help offset, like you said, all those injuries. That way you're at least stacked enough so that when you go into the playoffs, those guys don't have to rush back. So I do like Ronald Jones, but the biggest thing is, like you mentioned, Lenny is a feature back, and he's showing us more and more that, look, if you give me feature back numbers, I'm going to give you feature back numbers back.
He said it would take an extraordinary offer.
Yeah, a
really?
good corner. I wish they could have got Stephon Gilmore. Gosh.
Yeah, man. All right. So who debuted this weekend? They won.
Yeah, and he got a
the
pick.
Falcons 19-10, right? You got a pick?
Yeah.
Man. Former Defensive Player of the Year. All right. So college football, TCU. Gary Patterson is out after 20 years as the head coach of TCU.
I want to know what the hell happened. Something happened for them to get rid of him because there's no reason why you get rid of Gary Patterson the way that mid-season. Well, that's the thing about it. They wanted him to stay for the rest of the year, and he's like, "Nah, I'm out immediately."
Okay.
They tried to convince him to stay, and he's like, "Nah, you want me gone? I's gone." Now I'm wondering, is he going to go for the LSU job or the USC job? Because to be quite honest, he'd be awesome in either one of the two. Mm-hmm. Now I don't know how his recruiting would go, especially because they've had some incidents and stuff down there at TCU. But as a coach, he's a good coach.
It depends on how James Franklin is feeling and Matt Campbell. I don't think he's past those two, but yeah, he'll get some calls.
Yeah, Franklin's. I think he's got like the #1 recruiting class coming in this year. Why would he leave that? That's hard to leave, even though it's Penn. But it is Penn State.
USC,
but it is Penn State. I mean, who has really done something in Penn State?
You probably take a lot of those recruits with him to USC.
Yeah, good point. Probably could.
All right, so Major League Baseball World Series, it is now 3-2. The Astros won 9-5 yesterday after going down early in that game. It's like 4-0, 5-0. Goes back to Houston starting tomorrow night, Tuesday, 3-2. So this just got interesting.
It did. I watched a portion of it, but I was engaged in football.
Yeah,
and then it was Halloween. I was had to drop kids off, pick up kids, and so
same kids you be doing karate with.
Yeah, you know,
little kids.
Hi-ya. Do a karate style, karate. Like Kawhi. Right. But that was such a great video. I love it. But anyway, no, it is getting interesting. 3-2. I hope Atlanta doesn't
jizz it away.
Jizz away a 3-1 lead
because they haven't won since 95. I really hope
that is in Atlanta. That is so Georgia.
Come on, Atlanta. Come on. Don't be
Georgia.
Don't beat you. Don't beat Georgia.
Don't be 3-1. Don't lose.
Lastly, Monday Night Football game. Giants at the Chiefs. What do you think? Can the Chiefs win this game?
Oh, they better. If they let Daniel Jones eat them alive, fire everybody. Yeah. No, seriously. You can't let you got to figure out a scheme around Daniel Jones. You can't let him beat y'all.
And does Patrick Mahomes have over 405 passing yards tonight?
No, but as you mentioned that there was a bettor that put $1,000 down on a bet for Mike White to have the most passing yards this past week. The bet was $1,000. The odds were 125-1, which means that if he wins $125,000. With that bet, because he was at the game for the Jets, as long as Patrick Mahomes and Daniel Jones don't throw over 400 yards,
somebody's going to do it. They've been forecasting a shootout for this game. Perfect weather. Both teams, they're getting receivers back. Shepard and Tony are going to be there. Yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. That's just so Vegas.
I feel so bad for him.
All right, that's it.
That's it. Oh, man. Oh, well, we appreciate y'all joining us as usual here on Unfair Sports. Thank you for checking us out here on YouTube as well as wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. While you're there, please like, subscribe to videos, and then rate us and review us on the pod and give us 5 stars. You don't think we deserve it? Man, just give us 5 anyway. Gift it. So, for Mike, Bob, and Wendy, thank you so much for doing your thing on the back end side. For my co-host, Jimmy, I have my power rankings up actually on Thursday instead of Friday this week, so I'll actually pick the right date for it to publish. My bad. As well as hit us up on the Unfair Fan Line, 430-901-1906, and let us know how you did on Daily Fantasy. I did good. OSG's write-up was good. If you follow his words, the goods will happen. So with that, we will chop it up with y'all in a few days. Peace.